Week 1 of the NFL season is officially upon us. What do the Seahawks have to do to capture an NFC West championship in 2025? We're going to be breaking it all down here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there, whether you're tuning in from Sammamish, Washington, or Fort Worth, Texas. We greatly appreciate you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We officially have arrived to week 1 of the 2025 NFL season. Seahawks 49ers set to battle at Lumen Field to kick off the new season. We'll be taking a look at what's new with the 49ers on the offensive side of the football. We've got a Monday mailbag, and we'll be talking NFC West title aspirations, what the Seahawks have to do to get back to the top of the division and return to the playoffs. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks will begin their journey, hopefully, to return to the postseason this upcoming Sunday when the 49ers come to town to open the 2025 season at Lumen Field. A ton of excitement for that rivalry matchup right out of the gate. The Seahawks looking to send a message to the rest of the NFC West. The 49ers just as much so. Hey, we won 6 games last season, but we've got our stars back healthy, and we are ready to climb back to the top of the division ourselves. So it's going to be a really intriguing season opener in the NFC West. Keeping that in mind, the fact these two teams play right out of the gate, Rob, I think that it's always worth discussing this at the beginning of the season, because now we have a better idea, at least somewhat better idea, of what this Seahawks team should look like this upcoming season. And we know the personnel. We generally know the 53-man roster, even with the couple moves that have happened the last few days. We know who is going to be there for the Seahawks in this game on Sunday against the 49ers. We know the strengths, at least we think we know the strengths, and what areas could be limitations. So let's talk about what this Seahawks team has to do to win the NFC West. They got 10 wins last year, but didn't win the division, and they missed the playoffs, the only double-digit win team that failed to make the postseason. And I feel like we have got to start and end this discussion with the run game on offense, because I think that is the biggest thing that is going to determine whether this is another 8, 9, 10-win team or it's an 11, 12-plus win team. The ability to get it, and I've got it highlighted, it's not because the number fits with the team. 12 is 1, whatever. To me, this team's got to be top 12 in rushing. That is where I think they have to fall after finishing 28th last year. They need to more than double that ranking. I think if they do that, it tells you the offensive line played a lot better, and I think that just bodes really well for this football team.
No, 100% agree with you. I think that it starts here in week 1 against the San Francisco 49ers, a game, by the way, that the Seahawks are actually home underdogs, 2.5-point dogs, to be exact at this point. I do think that if Seattle was able to control the line of scrimmage, be able to run the football as effectively as they did in the preseason, then everything else is much easier. I think the defense is going to be able to play much better because you're going to be able to control the clock. I think that Sam Darnold is going to be much more effective because, again, one of the things that we've talked about ad nauseum is that he is much more effective as a play-action passing quarterback rather than just putting the entire offense on his shoulders. So yes, I 100% agree with you. Whether they be the 12th ranked team, the 14th ranked team, the 5th ranked team, I do think that if the Seahawks are going to return to the postseason, if they're going to win the NFC West division, then they have to be one of the best teams in the NFL when it comes to controlling the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball, especially especially, we know on defense that they had controlled the line of scrimmage a year ago. They were very effective in that way. But if they want to be successful and get to the postseason, they have to be able to run the ball effectively. And you have the running back talent to do so. And obviously, the preseason tape suggests that Seattle is going to be able to run the ball effectively. Now they've got to carry that over into the regular season.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest question. Are they going to be able to translate what we saw playing against backups? And there were some starters in the lineup, especially the Kansas City game, but can they translate that to going against Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and all the really good players they are going to be seeing in that 49ers defense that's coached by Robert Saleh, who's been a great defensive coordinator in the past in San Francisco. So you got to show you can run the ball against that and show that it translates from the preseason games. What we have seen in regular season games a year ago, it was undeniable the impact Ernest Jones had on this defense with his arrival at the trade deadline. And after his first game, we'll give him a pass there. He'd been in Seattle for 10 minutes before kickoff, and they gave up a lot of points that game. But after that point on, this was a top 5 scoring defense in the NFL. And I think you look at the continuity, 13 of the 14 players with the most snaps last season are back on the roster. I think that continuity, some people have kind of scoffed at this when I've brought it up on radio interviews recently. Why do you think this should be a top 5 defense? Because almost everybody's back, and they were a top 5 unit last year. And Mike Macdonald now is in year 2 running his defense, and he's going to be able to really maximize the talent that he's got there. To me, for the Seahawks to be able to win this division, if they drop out of the top 5 or top 10 even, let's say the top 10, if they're not a top 10 scoring defense, then it puts more pressure on Sam Darnold in the offense. And I think that could be something that spirals into a bad situation for the Seahawks. They need this defense. I don't necessarily want to say to carry the football team, but they need it to be a top 5 unit because of what they have invested, both salary cap and draft pick wise, and the fact that you have a mastermind calling the plays in Mike Macdonald. The expectations are through the roof, and they should be. If they fail to meet those, it is going to be a lot tougher to win this division.
No question about it. And I do think that it is, fair to expect dominance on the defensive side of the ball. As you just mentioned, Corbin, the Seahawks are bringing back basically everybody on defense. The player that they are replacing is Draymond Jones, and they are replacing him with DeMarcus Lawrence. So I think, again, that those radio hosts that are scoffing, as you said, I think that they're going to get punched in the mouth, literally or metaphorically, the way that Seattle is going to literally be punching some offensive linemen in the mouth, and hopefully running backs and quarterbacks. If they are going to have the success that I anticipate they're going to have, I've gone on record with you on this show and with the Seahawks Squad podcast as well, with a 13-4 projected regular season record, including a victory against these upcoming San Francisco 49ers. Just because, again, I do believe in Mike Macdonald's defense. I absolutely believe in the talent that the Seahawks have acquired, not only this season, but in the past. I think that this is a defense that is built to be very, very successful. Maybe not as flashy as the Legion of Boom in the past, but I think every bit as physical as some of those Baltimore Ravens defenses that Mike Macdonald helped create. And I think that that's the type of a defense that is going to be very effective in an NFC West division. I think it's going to be very competitive. And I think the San Francisco 49ers are a very formidable opponent. But at the same time, I think that winning the line of scrimmage is the key to football always. And I think that Seattle, along with the Los Angeles Rams, have the best front, especially defensively, in all of the NFC West division.
As far as a couple other things that I highlighted that I think are really going to be key for this team to get back to the top of the division, I've talked about this since they signed him back in March. I don't think you need Sam Darnold to go out and throw 35 touchdown passes. You don't need him to throw for 4,400 yards. If he does that, I've talked about it before. I don't know that necessarily is a good thing, because that means the defense didn't play as well, most likely, and they had to throw the ball a lot more. They weren't getting off to better starts early in games running the football. So maybe there's the, exemption to that where he comes out, he's just slinging it, and this is just way better passing offense than we thought it was going to be, and he can carry him. But I think you need him to build off last season, not statistically, but you need to see him be effective, moving the chains, not turning the football over a lot, get the football out in a timely manner, take another stride forward in that regard, so you're not taking all those sacks like he did in a couple of those losses to the Rams last year, including the playoffs. If he's able to do those things, and having a complementary run game is going to help with that. But Seattle's got a chance to really take off if he is playing effective. I don't want to say game manager football, but to an extent, that's game manager football. Let the run game be a big part of your offense. Let the defense pick up a lot of the slack, and don't turn the ball over. Get the ball to your playmakers and let them go to work. Get the ball out in a timely fashion. If Sam Darnold can do that, and the rookies like Gray Zabel, Nicky Manwari can come in and make an impact early with the players they already have that are coming back, then that bodes really well for this to be an 11, 12, 13-win team, which I think wins the NFC West division this year.
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned Seattle's rookies. However, I think that the rookies that are going to be critical for Sam Darnold's success are going to be Elijah Arroyo and Torrey Horton, as well as Gray Zabel, certainly as the first-round pick. And that, to me, remains the biggest question I have. I am convinced, based on preseason tape, based on the conversations that I've had, based on just watching John Benton, his offensive line coach, throughout his illustrious career, Rick Dennison as well, throughout the NFL. I do have questions about Seattle if they have enough playmakers at the receiver position. And I don't just mean wide receiver, I mean pass catcher, tight end as well. I know that Elijah Arroyo and Torrey Horton can be very successful against college talent and against, the backups in the preseason. I know that Cooper Kupp is an unbelievable player when completely healthy, and I feel strongly that Jackson Smith and Jigba can be successful as well. I also have concerns, however, that does Seattle have enough big play ability? Can they make enough people miss after the catch? I feel very confident in Sam Darnold. That's why I haven't even mentioned him to this point. But I do think that Seattle is going to have to find some kind of a playmaker, similar to the defensive side of the ball. I feel very confident Leonard Williams is going to be able to put up similar statistics to what he did a year ago. I want to see somebody else step up, somebody else play the role that Derek Hall did a year ago with 8+ sacks. Is that going to be Boye Mafe? Is that going to be Cheney Uosu? Is that going to be the aforementioned DeMarcus Lawrence? Is that going to be Derek Hall? Maybe it's all of them. That's what I think is going to happen for the Seahawks to return to the postseason, Corbin, is they're going to have to be that good on defense. They're going to have to make enough plays in the passing game to complement what I expect to be one of the NFL's best running or most improved running games in 2025.
When we come back, we've got questions and maybe some answers coming up on our Monday mailbag segment. Don't go away. You're listening to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets, it can be a hassle between login screens and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying, and I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets for sporting events. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, such as how many touchdowns Sam Darnold will throw against the 49ers, building a same-game parlay with multiple prop bets from the opening week, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Some special information here for all the 12s. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. All right, Rob, it's time for our Monday mailbag. We got tons of questions from the 12s. Going to get our first one here, and I think it's a great question to start for you, sir, coming from Nick Doney. Who was the biggest surprise to make the team out of camp, in your opinion? And I think I know what your answer is going to be here, but we'll see where we're going.
Yeah, for me, it's no question. It's Italian Nick Callerup. I think that he's a good football player. I thought that he was destined for the practice squad. I recognize the fact that this is a new offense that is going to incorporate the tight ends more often, but I still was surprised that he made the initial 53.
This question coming from Felipe Oliveira. What do you think about the lack of movement for Micah Parsons? Was it more about how John Schneider feels about the team or how he feels about the player? So I'm going to add this. Like, this is something that I found out last week after the Packers had made this trade. I was reaching out trying to figure out if Seattle had inquired, and my understanding is John Schneider never even picked up the phone. So the Seahawks, even with Adam Durde being the defensive coordinator, sounds to me like they were never even in the mix to potentially look to make this trade. So anybody that thought maybe this would be a deal that made sense, the Seahawks clearly were not interested. Maybe they liked the player, but they just weren't going to pay that price. But I'm actually wondering a little bit, based on what I was told, this was not verbatim, but I'm wondering if this is a case where the Seahawks just felt like, you know what, we really like the guys we've got. We don't need to add this guy. And so there's some interesting wrinkles to add to this, but that told me the Seahawks were not at all in this at all. So Seahawks fans can sit there and bemoan that and wonder why John Schneider wasn't always competing. But look, this just may not have been a deal that he and Mike Macdonald felt like they needed to make. And the fact that Adam Durde was not pushing for it, that might be saying something on this front. Our next question here, coming from I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. I really like Seattle Shove for our version of the tush push. Are there any other name contenders? What's your favorite? Rob, I want to hear your thoughts on this. When Milroe comes in and it's time for a tush push, the Seattle Shove, or do you have another name that you like for that?
Well, I've kind of bounced around with whether it should be the Seahawks or Seattle, but I like scrum. I think that this is a rugby play. And a scrum, of course, for those of you who are familiar with rugby, is basically when the entire team lines up and basically just kind of mass moves forward, similar to what we've seen with the so-called tush push or whatever you want to call it, the brotherly shove, as some people call it for Philadelphia. To me, the Seattle scrum or the Seahawks scrum has a little bit of the alliteration that I think is appealing, and I think that it more accurately describes what is actually happening.
Our next question here coming from Donnie. Why don't teams sprinkle in their running back 1 and running back 2 in the backfield at the same time? Walker and Charbonnet would be a nightmare for linebackers in both running and passing out of either one, with Helani able to put in reps if needed too, even 1 or 2 plays in some drives. So I will say this, there are teams in the league that do this. This is not a foreign concept. Sean Payton has been doing this for years. He loves to put in multiple running backs at the same time. And there are teams like San Francisco that will move Christian McCaffrey out to receiver and have another running back in the backfield. So there are teams that do it. I could see the Seahawks occasionally doing this, but I think what is going to eliminate it for the most part is Zach Charbonnet last year played some fullback. They're not going to be doing that with Robbie Oots now on the roster. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible that we could see a few snaps here and there where you're going to have Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet in the field together. But I think the presence of a true fullback is probably going to cut into whatever reps there were there. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. The Seahawks have their identity, and Robbie Oots is going to be a big part of that blocking for Charbonnet or Walker when they are out of the backfield. Hawkstrologer, does the rostering of all these edge players and seeing DeMarcus Lawrence listed as a defensive lineman suggest to you we might be running more true five-man fronts this year with 3 defensive ends and 2 outside linebackers? That's an excellent question, Rob.
It really is. I think that it does suggest that Seattle is going to be much more versatile up front than what we've seen in the past, what Mike Macdonald kind of showed a year ago. I think that that Seattle is just recognizing that the most of the teams that are playing deep into the playoffs are doing so by throwing the football. And so you want to be multiple and big men, like we kind of talked about this, Corbin, that the fact that neither Quentin Bohanna or Brendan Peely, and obviously not Jonathan Hankins either, made this team on the initial 53. I think it feels like Seattle is just recognizing the fact that the game is changing. You can find a big guy to kind of plug inside, but finding guys that are slippery enough to be pass rushers, that really is where the game is. So I do think it's an excellent question. I do think it's or excellent observation, I should say, and I think that it definitely reflects the fact that the NFL is changing and that Seattle feels like they're a little bit ahead of the curve rather than just playing reactionary football.
Nico X on X. What are the Hawks doing with their cap space, and why isn't Jadeveon Clowney back yet? Jokes aside, can we expect Clowney back, and do you think extensions to key players with more money up front this season are going to be used with the cap space we have left? So it's possible Seattle could do that latter with some of their rookies, but we are now past the point where John Schneider normally does extensions. Just being honest for his track record, there's been a couple exceptions, but usually when the season starts, he's done with negotiations. Like, he's not trying to lock guys up. KJ Wright is one exception I can think of a guy that got an extension during the season, but it just normally does not happen. What I'm thinking now at this point, the fact that Clowney is still out there unsigned, Zadarius Smith is still out there unsigned. Look, rosters have to be set tomorrow for this upcoming weekend. So I don't see now at this point the Seahawks signing either one of those guys. But one thing to keep in mind, teams after week 1 do not have to pay guaranteed money. So I'm wondering if the Seahawks and other teams that could be interested in those players at this point, they weren't here for camp or preseason. Let's wait another week. Maybe they talk to these players and say, hey, get yourself ready physically. Make sure you're ready. We'll sign you next week. I'm really curious to see if that ends up happening with Clowney, because at some point somebody's got to sign him. But Uchenna Nwosu's health is also something to consider here. It might just be a really good sign that the Seahawks are really happy with where he's at. And maybe he plays this weekend against the San Francisco 49ers, or earliest he's ready in week 2 when they go to Pittsburgh. There are a number of things at play here. Real quick, one last question here for Rob. And this one coming on – let's see here. We got a bunch of good ones. Can't answer all of them, but let's go with this one from Xavier Mitchell. Thoughts on the new rivalry uniforms, and what's your favorite feature about them?
Well, I was surprised by kind of the metallic green, and I want to see them in person rather than just having some pictures online. My favorite feature about them is kind of the little squiggles that they have on the uniform that kind of represent the 12s, that represent the volume that the 12s are able to bring. I think that is important to acknowledge the impact that the fan base and their just how loud that they are. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the new uniforms. To me, the primary colors with the Seattle Seahawks should always be blue and silver. But at the same time, if you were to ask my favorite feature, that little insignia kind of representing the volume that the fans are able to create, to me, it's a nice acknowledgement.
All right, one more question here real quick, coming from Steve Margent, not to be mixed up with Steve Largent here. Talk to us about your trip. All your listeners would enjoy a good travel story. So if a few of you saw the pictures I had from Utah, I was really excited to get to see a bunch of the arches and get to see a number of those parks. But I will just say yesterday, getting to go to the trail that goes up to Ice Lake, and I think there's 3 lakes there in the San Juan Mountains. Let's just put it this way. I am happy to be talking to you guys today because there was a couple of treacherous parts of the trail there, and I was worried I was not going to get across them. Let's just put it that way. So I am very happy to be doing Locked On Seahawks. But, man, gorgeous views. And if you like challenging heights, that is one you should have on your bucket list. When we come back, hey, we've got week 1 coming up. Seahawks, 49ers, Lumen Field, rivals ready to duke it out to open the season. What's new with San Francisco on offense? We're going to be diving into that coming up next here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner. You can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everybody's researching, drafting, building their championship squads. If you haven't joined the league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or you're a veteran creating your millionth league. Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features to make the game even better. With season kickoff coming up on September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy, which offers so many fun ways to go to battle with your friends. Want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until one team is left standing. Want to play instantly with your friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode, or if you prefer the classics, get the crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Most people can't name their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you could end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery apps. Now I'm working to budget smarter and save more for other expenses that pop up. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNFL. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks and 49ers will rekindle their rivalry in week 1 right out of the gate at Lumen Field. The 49ers looking to bounce back from a disappointing 6-win season. Tons of injuries last year, and the team just kind of unraveled because of that in the second half. They've had a lot of personnel changes. We'll get to some of those on offense today. The Seahawks are going to have to deal with a much different looking personnel from the 49ers. And there's going to be some old standbys. Unlike last year where Christian McCaffrey was hurt pretty much the entire season, McCaffrey's expected to be out there. Juwan Jennings, it sounds like there's a good chance he's going to be playing in this game. Brandon Ayuk, however, will not be. He's out to at least week 6. As he continues his recovery from a torn ACL, a significant knee injury that he suffered last season. And this is a team that had a few other quality players, including Aaron Banks, with their starting guards, bolt out of town in free agency. So, Rob, this is an offense, particularly at the receiver position. Deebo Samuel getting traded to the Commanders. There's a lot of turnover there. And they're going to be counting on Ricky Pearsall, who really didn't do much last year. Unfortunately, there was the shooting thing at the beginning of the season. He got shot, missed some games, was not able to really get into much of a groove. They are going to be counting on him in year 2 to pick up the slack. But, man, they've got a lot of new pieces. They're going to have to try to quickly get caught up so they can compensate for Deebo Samuel and, at least for a while, Brandon Ayuk not being on the field.
Yeah, but I would argue they still have the best running back in the division, arguably the NFL, with a healthy Christian McCaffrey. They still have one of the absolute elite tight ends in all of the NFL, of course, in George Kittle. for my money, as old as he is, Trent Williams is still arguably the best offensive tackle in all of the NFL, certainly among the most intimidating and imposing. And damn it, Brock Purdy is a terrific football player. I had an opportunity to go to Santa Clara, see the 49ers in person, Corbin, and I can tell you, having seen some Hall of Fame quarterbacks in person in the past, it's very rare that I've ever seen a quarterback throw with the anticipation and the accuracy with which this young man throws. So I think the 49ers, while they did lose a lot of players through a salary cap purge that is almost historic, I still think that they have 6 players. I mentioned 4 of them on offense, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, the obvious one, still on defense. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in tomorrow's show. But this is still a very formidable and talented team. I'm a big fan of Ricky Pearsall. I'm a big fan of Juwan Jennings. And so I do think that this is a 49ers team that is going to bounce back in the 2025 season, assuming, of course, that they're able to stay healthy. Now, I think that their top 6 are elite. It's the rest of the next 47 players. I think that there is a gap, and that's where I think that Seattle's depth is going to be able to ultimately overwhelm the 49ers, at least in this opening game. But again, there has been some significant turnover. It's funny because we're going to talk so much over this season about Clint Kubiak as the Seahawks offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, his brother, Clay Kubiak, who is now in his 5th season with the 49ers, but his first year as offensive coordinator for the 49ers. So there's some sibling rivalry in this game among the coaches that I think that makes this game that much more fascinating as well. So again, there have been some changes. Of course, the 49ers made the trade for Brian Robinson. They made the trade for Sky Moore. Last time he touched NFL football, of course, he was taking a punt back for a touchdown against the Seahawks. The Seahawks. Kyle Shanahan brought in his favorite quarterback, other than Brock Purdy, of course, and Mac Jones. So there has been some significant turnover with the San Francisco 49ers offense, and one that I think is going to make them that much more challenging for Mike Macdonald's defense to cover them in this game.
And we'd be remiss not to mention Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to be playing in this game for the 49ers. After being cut by the Seahawks, the 49ers quickly signed him. So Seattle gets to see him very quickly just wearing red and gold. But I want to look at those 2 trades you mentioned, because to me, those are going to be deals that are going to have a significant bearing on this 49ers team, at least early in the season, because look, at this stage of his career, the 49ers are just hoping to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy. And he is now at that age where you have to wonder, are you going to be able to do that? They're going to have to take some workload off him. And I think part of that is going to be playing him more as a receiver. I really think that's the next stage of his career where he's still going to be used out of the backfield a lot. But I think to prolong his career, you get him more on the outside and let him catch the football, because he can play receiver as well as anybody. I mean, he is a dynamic talent, but that is how you keep him healthy, limit the between the tackles touches a little bit, and get more opportunities for him outside. So that's where Brian Robinson fits in now. Now you've got another player that has had success in the NFL, coming from Alabama, a bruising back between the tackles that can take a big workload like that, and you can keep your run game humming with Christian McCaffrey playing the outside, and that can help your loss of receivers that you've had with him playing out there. So Sky Moore is another guy that can also fit into that equation. We're looking to get some targets because he's kind of that gadget receiver that you can throw the ball out too quickly on a screen, hope he can make somebody miss, create some yardage. He has struggled in the NFL as a receiver. The 49ers are going to be hoping that their offense, they can unlock some of that potential he had coming out of Western Michigan. So these guys they brought in, these were not just trades made just to add bodies. They're going to find ways to get them out there, in part because of all the turnover that they've had and the number of defections they've had, particularly at the skill positions on offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned the fact that Juwan Jennings returned to the practice field for the 49ers today. Dominic Pooney, a standout right guard, he returned as well. That's especially notable considering, as you mentioned, that Aaron Banks, they're a talented, somewhat inconsistent left guard, signed a big free agent deal in the offseason and left the 49ers as well. So, again, the 49ers are pretty healthy, and that is, of course, the biggest biggest question mark that they had a year ago. And so that's, again, one of the reasons why I think that this is going to be a terrific football game to kick off Seattle's 2025 season.
Yeah, tomorrow when we come back, we're going to be looking at the defense. And honestly, if you think there was a lot of turnover in offense, wait till we talk tomorrow. The 49ers have had a ton of turnover at all three levels. They've had turnover on their coaching staff, albeit with a guy that's pretty familiar with coaching for Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh. But they've had a lot of changes there. So we're going to be diving into the defense for the 49ers tomorrow. And we'll also be pulling the curtain back a little bit and discussing how this new exposure to Clint Kubiak's offense may end up helping the Seahawks as they prepare for this game coming up against Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. That will be a jam-packed episode. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We'll see you back tomorrow for our Tuesday show with plenty of more intel on the upcoming Week 1 opponent for the Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.